All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome. So we are independent distributors with Zija International, and we are pleased to bring you the Back to Basics series. This series is intended to help discover that healthy shouldn't be hard, what nutrition is exactly, and how you can engage in a healthier lifestyle in a way that is not boring or complicated. We'll highlight some topics that you may have no idea about the impact they make on your well-being, what you should expect from being healthier, how will you feel and why, and what are some of the biggest nutrition mistakes in our modern way of life. Incorporating the one step at a time improvement plan, we hope you'll find living healthier is also living fun. We are so excited to be working with our speaker, Chris Kenny. As a lifelong student and advocate of healthy living, Chris has a deep interest in natural solutions for better health and a strong desire to help others discover a path of self-improvement for a more enriching life. His background among many fitness-related activities includes a Bachelor of Science in Physiology and graduate work in the neurosciences. Having a sound understanding of the science behind natural products and how they work in the body, Chris is able to share simple descriptions about their functions in a way that helps others to understand how they are beneficial. In this series, we are simply curating information, sharing and explaining information that is out there in the literature in a way that helps people to make use of it for their own benefit. We are not making any specific medical or health claims. Tonight's topic is moringa, why you need this superfood. I am so excited about this segment that's coming up and what we're going to learn from Chris tonight. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Lisa. So I'm just going to take a minute to set up here, share my screen. Can everybody see that? You can see, just give me a thumbs up, Lisa, if you can see the screen.
You're good, Chris.
Good, okay. So welcome to our third installment. In our first week, we talked about the concept of what is nutrition. And we went through a few different things there. Basically discussing the fact that nutrition is multidimensional, multifaceted. And in the second week, last week, we discussed something that we call the North American famine. And I'm just going to recap a few things from last week's talk. The North American famine is actually, maybe it should be called the famine of the modern world, really, because most industrialized nations, most developed nations have a food supply similar to what we have here. And there are weaknesses. There are things that are missing in providing our food in the way that we do. As you can see, in a very recent state of evolution, like in the last 10 years or 15 years, if we can actually evolve that fast, there's been a very noticeable change in the physical condition of very large numbers of people in our population. So it's pretty evident that something about modern living is contributing to negative changes in our health. So what do we mean by a famine of the modern world? There seems to be lots of food supply around. There's the grocery stores are stocked with product. And before I go on, I just want to make sure that I'm not making light of situations where people really are in a shortage of food. People that are going to our food banks and things like that. I'm not talking about things like that, okay? That is a whole other topic of discussion. I'm talking about our normal food supply that most of us are subject to on a day-to-day basis. We basically have a food supply that now, lo and behold, is lacking in vital nutrients. Now, on top of that, we make a lot of food choices that are not very smart, that are nutritionally poor. And a lot of that has to do with convenience or fun. There's been a fast food boom in our nation in the last, well, let's say let's say for the better part 30 years, it's really when it's been getting worse and becoming more prominent. But we're also talking a lot about prepared foods, things that you buy, like say you go to Costco and you buy things that you put in the oven to warm up that are all prepared. Just put it in the oven, warm it up, and out it comes. It's processed food. But on top of those things, modern living itself requires more nutrients due to the high levels of stress and environmental toxins. Both of those things rob your body of vital nutrients. There is no shortage of calories. And you can look all around you, you can find calories. You can go to Tim Hortons and buy donuts. You can go to McDonald's and buy burgers. You can go to the grocery store and buy whatever it is that your heart desires. But the problem is there's a shortage of nutrients that are required to convert those calories to usable energy by the body. And what's happening is those calories that are not being converted for use are being stored. And a very high number of our population now is overweight. That's a huge problem. And where do those problems arise from? It's largely to do with the modern methods of food production that prefers yield and convenience over quality. The food quality of a generation or two before, for example, your grandparents, was quite different than what we're actually experiencing today in terms of nutrient quality. And there are studies done through universities that have been witnessing and recording and watching this, for example, crop depletion. Crops that were grown 50 years ago had noticeably more nutrients in them than they do today. So how do we know that there's a problem with the food supply? What makes us point the finger towards food? Well, beyond some of the studies that we are doing on food qualities, there is a pretty obvious across the board increased incidence of various different symptoms that we can attribute to what we're consuming as food. The most obvious of that, which is diabetes and overweight or obesity. And the reason that those two are so obvious is because they are visual and they're measurable. But underneath all of that, there are a host of other symptoms and things that are going wrong. So the diabetes and overweight that we've seen skyrocket in the last 10, 15, 20 years, it's really just it's like a sign of other things underneath that are also really in bad shape. The increased amount of heart disease, cancers, autoimmune disease, immune weaknesses, allergies, premature aging. This is an interesting one. For the first time in a long time that we can remember, the generation that is coming up behind us, the next two generations, are actually forecasted to live a shorter lifespan than the generation before. If that doesn't indicate some problems, I don't know what does. The other things that we see with people are chronic low energy, mental health issues, and a lot more. There's a lot of things now because they are across the board, across gender, across age groups, across different activity levels. We know that it's something very common to us all, and the thing that's the most common to us all is our food supply. So what can we do about it? You can take back control of your life and your health and jump into a natural health revolution. The NHR. It's a multifaceted approach to achieve the best possible health state in the body. And as we talked about before, the role of nutrition is to create those clean systems that are all part of your body's functioning. Systems that are clean and well nutrified are systems that are free of symptoms. So what do we need to do? We need to supply active nutrients that are cell active, and I'll discuss what that means in a minute. We need to supply active nutrients in a balance that nature intended them to be in. We need proper cell function that provides a healthy metabolism that converts calories to usable energy. So where do we start? Well, the first step is to create a strong foundation of nutrition for yourself. And how can you do that? Well, it's time that you met moringa, the ultimate superfood with 90+ nutrients in it. Now, when I mention this name to people, I say, have you ever heard of moringa before? The answer with most people is, what? What's that? I've never heard of moringa before. It's like in this part of the world, it's not very well known. It's becoming well known and it's being studied by universities and labs around the nation. But when you visit other parts of the world, culturally, it's something that's been used for a long time. And it's known in these other countries by a variety of names. And it's a rich source of natural medicine for some of these other cultures. It's really only new here in the Western world. So before we go on, let's just define what is a superfood. Is it really something that is, really that different? Is it something that comes from a different planet? I mean, what is it that makes a superfood? And that's really just a moniker or a nickname for a foodstuff that contains above average amounts and varieties of nutrients. There are many foods that claim to be superfoods, but moringa has the distinction of being known as the most nutrient-dense botanical on Earth. And you can look that one up for yourself. And that's really a culmination of botanical research that we do not know of another botanical on the face of this planet that has the nutrient storehouse and warehouse that moringa does. So if you use moringa, does it replace a good diet? Does it make it okay to just go out and eat whatever you want? You would not believe how many times I've been asked that by people. Say, well, if I do this, if I take this thing every day, can I go to Tim Hortons and eat donuts or go to McDonald's and eat fast food and do this and that? Of course not. So what should your strategy be? You should have a great diet, the best diet that you can put together for yourself, and then top it off with moringa. Let moringa fill in the gaps of what's missing in our food supply. A good round diet of all the different foodstuffs, and I'm not suggesting that you need to be a vegan or vegetarian or, many different diets work for different people. But if you have a good solid diet that does not contain a lot of refined and processed foods or fast foods, and then you top it off with something like moringa that provides all these nutrients that are missing in our food supply, you're in pretty good shape. Let's talk a little bit more about exactly what moringa offers. What are the basics? 90+ nutrients. All 9 essential amino acids. This is very, very rare for a plant source to have all the essential amino acids. And if you'll remember from your biochemistry, those of you that took it, that there are essential amino acids and then the other amino acids. Now, what makes an amino acid essential is that your body does not produce it. You have to supply it through the diet. The other amino acids your body actually manufactures and converts from other substances. But you need these amino acids in order to make complete proteins. And without a complete protein, you basically have no protein in the body. Incomplete proteins are they don't function as protein in the body. Vitamins. Look at all these vitamins. Minerals. Now, science knows a lot about how vitamins and minerals work. We've been studying these things for a long time. But what about the juicy bits? The juicy bits are the phytocompounds that science is just beginning to understand, really. Chlorophyll, carotenoids, cytokinins, flavonoids, omega oils, which you hear a lot about these days, plant sterols, polyphenols, lutein for the eyes, xanthins, rutin, so much more. Now, plant sterols, I think are pretty interesting. Now, you probably have heard of sterols before, you just don't realize it. Cholesterol is a form of sterol, okay? Now, plant sterols compete for absorption with cholesterol. So you can actually regulate the levels of cholesterol in your body by including plant sterols in your body. So it's a way to actually manage cholesterol in your system. And some Western doctors now are even suggesting that people take plant sterols in order to manage their cholesterol levels as opposed to using things like Lipitor. So that's a pretty interesting move. And lo and behold, moringa has a ton of this stuff in it. Now let's go back there for a minute. When you compare moringa to basic foodstuffs, look at the difference in nutrient quality. 4 times as much calcium as milk, 7 times as much vitamin C as an orange. This is gram for gram, weight for weight, moringa versus these foodstuffs. 3 times the potassium of bananas. Everybody says, oh, if you need potassium to prevent cramps in your body and your muscles, you got to have bananas. Well, I'll take moringa, thanks. 4 times the vitamin A of a carrot, 2 times the protein of yogurt. Incredible. So let's just talk a little bit about, before we go on, the importance of source and context. Nature provides a balance with a host of molecules that are like a supporting cast in a stage production. So imagine in a stage production, you have the stars, the big names, and you have all the other guys that are in the production. Okay? To make a good production, you need the stars, but you also need the supporting cast. And in nutrition, that's important too. These small other molecules that accompany things in nature, they provide modulation and absorption systems. They're so important to have present. And if you looked at like an analysis, for example, let's take moringa leaves and you do an analysis of what's in there. These large peaks that you see are the main molecules of interest that make that specific plant magic or strong at what it does, whether it's vitamin C or vitamin D or chlorophyll or polyphenol or whatever it is. They're going to be in large amounts. But these other molecules that accompany it are very important for these guys to actually do their job. They're so important to have there, and nature puts them there in accompaniment with these other molecules for that purpose. And where we go wrong within the pharmaceuticals or concentrated vitamins is that a lot of the times these things are stripped away. A lot of pharmaceuticals actually come from plant sources, but why do they have all these side effects and things that go along with them is because pharmaceuticals, for the large part, they don't have any of this along with the active ingredient. They remove all this. And they magnify these things or find a way to synthesize them, but they strip this away, and it's so important for these to be there. There's just one other little thing that I want you to be aware of is, what does cell active and bioavailable mean, okay? Very simply, it means that those nutrients actually cross into the cell wall. They cross over the cell wall to get into the interior of the cell where they actually do their work. Things that are not cell active, they don't pass into the cell. They just pass through the system. And they can actually be, because they don't actually go to work inside the cell and they're concentrating in the tissues unused, they can actually be toxic. So synthetic vitamins can be damaging to your system. You know how you see foodstuffs that'll say, for example, you buy flour and they'll say the flour is fortified with vitamins. Those are the worst vitamins in existence. And the food industry would be doing us all a favor by leaving all those things out instead of adding them, because they're actually toxic. Now, inside the cell is where all the magic is done. This is what makes your body function. Your body is composed, cells are the basic building blocks of your body, like the bricks in a brick wall. So cells are organized into tissues, or organized into organs, or organized into organ systems, and that's what makes your body's composed of different systems: the digestive system, cardiovascular system, skeletal system. They're all cells that are specialized, different types of cells that are organized into these systems. But your true nutrition comes down to the cellular level. And that's what we talked about I think it was in the first talk, we talked about what's the difference between macro and micro aspects of nutrition. Well, we can put things in our body that cause us to have very fast responses, like things like probiotics or hydration or caffeine, things like that. Those things function very quickly, but they aren't really true nutrition, so to speak. When you want your body to be ultimately healthy, it has to start down at the cellular level. And one of the things that are so important is that antioxidant activity inside the cell, because the cell is constantly being invaded with oxidation reactions that actually break down and destroy different components inside the cell, whether it's the fats, whether it's the mitochondria that create energy in their bodies, or right down into the nucleus, destroying and disrupting and changing the DNA. So it's all we mean by cell active is that it crosses the cell, that those nutrients get to where they're supposed to go and do the work. If they're not active, if they're synthetic, they're analogs, or they're in extremely high doses, they don't cross into the cell to do the work. So hopefully you're not confused by this point. I didn't want to get all sciencey on this, but in short, many supplements get it wrong. They're synthetic analogs of nutrients. I don't know if you've ever heard of isomers, things like that. You can take, for example, let's take vitamin C. Vitamin C can be a natural vitamin C or it could be a synthetic vitamin C. And if you wrote down their chemical formula on paper, they would look the same. But a synthetic vitamin C is actually an isomer or a mirror image of real vitamin C. So even though chemically they look the same, the body doesn't see them the same way. And it'll reject something synthetic. It doesn't absorb it at the cell like the natural molecule will. So important. Many of these supplements are missing the supporting cast that we talked about just a minute ago. They're so important for bioavailability and absorption and modulation to take control of how those nutrients are acting. Nutrients that are provided in unnatural amounts, like megavitamins. Where in nature do you see vitamins available, like in a plant, in some of the doses that we see in some of these vitamins that are sold on a shelf? Thousands of milligrams of vitamin C, are you kidding me? High doses of vitamin E, high doses of vitamin D. The high doses of fat-soluble vitamins are very dangerous because they accumulate in the body and the liver. You can actually damage yourself with these things. So megavitamins can actually act like a pharmaceutical in the fact that they can be actually quite damaging to you. And as we're going to talk about a little bit later, a lot of these other vitamins and supplements, they're not delivered as a food vehicle. And that turns out to be a very important factor in how your body recognizes and uses these nutrients. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So getting back to the juicy bits in moringa, the phytocompounds, anti-inflammatories, antioxidants, plant hormones, amino acids, sterols and stanols, cytokinins, glycosides, flavonols. It would take me all night to describe to you what these things are. But essentially, the functions that the things that they do for you are like supporting a normal inflammation response. We know that our bodies have to have some inflammation in them because that's actually a protective mechanism that your body uses to grow and stay healthy and to fight off infection. But chronic, ongoing, high levels of inflammation in the body that is a result of stress or toxins in the body are damaging and eventually break your body down. They heighten mental clarity, provide sustained energy, support for the immune system, promote a healthy circulation, help maintain normal cholesterol levels, digestion aids, helping to maintain normal blood sugar levels, providing natural anti-aging phytocompounds and antioxidants like we just talked about. The roles that these things provide, these juicy bits, go way beyond just the vitamins and minerals that are required for basic processes. So they're not something that you want to be about, that you want to be without. And probably one of the most interesting things about moringa is zeatin. Maybe the strongest antioxidant known. This plant hormone has very strong implications for human health. And now it's really being looked at seriously. Even in Western medicine, they're looking at this thing. It works to delay biochemical modifications in aging. So if you like anti-aging, it's such a strong antioxidant inside the cell. It protects the skin. It protects against nerve cell toxicity that's associated with aging, like getting into things like senility and Alzheimer's, those proteins that develop in the brain as neurological tissue starts to degrade. The studies alone with cancer is very interesting, showing how zeatin can inhibit cancer cell growth by helping cells differentiate normally. Now, the hallmark of cancer is basically cell growth and gone wild, uncontrolled. That's basically what cancer is. Losing the differentiation, like for example, bone cells that don't mature as bone cells. They mature as because of something happened to the genetic machinery. Those cells end up being something else that's non-definable by the body. So zeatin helps to put that differentiation pattern back in control. It helps cells regain normal tight control. Many species of high quality plants also contain zeatin, but moringa has been shown to contain it in amounts thousands of times greater. Not just a little bit, but by a whole lot. There aren't plants, you won't find a plant on the face of this earth that contains zeatin in the amounts that moringa does. So for all the above reasons and more, moringa is the heart and soul of Zija's nutrition. Moringa is an ingredient in many of our products, not just the main moringa supplements. We put it in a lot of things that we work with, whether it's the sports supplements, the skincare, our basic nutrition products, you name it. We try and throw moringa into just about everything. So now some people ask, why isn't it just a pill that I can take? Well, those are available out on the market. You can find just like moringa caps and moringa pills. You can take those if you want. But we prefer to provide it in the most nutritious and bioavailable form. Consuming it as a drink, the body recognizes. Now, remember just a few minutes ago, I was talking about one of the things where supplements fall down is that they don't provide that supplementation in a form that your body recognizes as food. And a lot of the times, those great big horse pills that you take as multivitamins or pill supplements, a lot of the times your body doesn't even break those things down. It just passes them through. And that's been shown, and obviously, I don't know who had to do that study, but it's been documented, believe me. So providing a drink that the body recognizes as a whole food that maximizes nutrition and bioavailability so that your cells and tissues are flooded with these nutrients. Getting moringa in a drink form activates digestive enzymes. It encourages absorption in the intestines. It would take a handful of these like another product, moringa filled capsules, to get even close to the amounts that are found in one easy on-the-go packet of one of our moringa supplements. Liquid supplements also have the advantage of faster and easier absorption, greater digestibility, and this is really good for older people, and improved potency, and they're a lot easier to swallow for some people. I don't know how many times I've asked somebody about supplementation. They say, well, if it's in a big pill, I can't take it because I just can't swallow these things. So taking a nice, tasty green drink that unfortunately looks like swamp water, that's a much easier way to take it. Now, there is other moringa available out on the market, but it's not like what we have. Trust me, for many different reasons. Now, first of all, we offer our straight moringa supplementation. We offer in 3 different formats. The Super Mix is straight moringa. The Smart Mix has a little bit less moringa in it than the Super Mix, but it has prebiotics in it. And prebiotics are basically the food that is essential for the bacteria in the gut to thrive. So it's like nutrition for the probiotic, put it that way. XM Plus is like Supermix, but it has energy component on top of it, with some ginseng and some green tea. It gives you a little bit of an extra kick in the pants in the morning if you use it in the morning. It's basically the world's best moringa for many different reasons. Where it's grown, how it's harvested, the species of plant alone. Yeah, you can grow moringa, you know, you can find moringa in other countries and different species of it, but they don't have the same nutrient profile that Moringa oleifera does. So important the species is, but also where it's grown, how it's picked, how it's dried, how it's harvested. And then when it's brought back over to our plant in the United States, how it's actually treated from there in order to deliver those little pouches of powder that you get. The sourcing is so important, the manufacturing conditions, the shade drying, and we're the only provider that actually uses the leaves, the seeds, and the fruit. If you most moringa that you find out in the market, it's just moringa leaves, and they're only getting part of the nutrient profile that way. But also the way they prepare their product, they lose a lot of the nutrition that's available even in the leaves before it actually gets to market, just because of the way they harvest it and treat it. So there you have it. Moringa is something that I certainly use every single day. I love it, and I wouldn't be without it. It forms the basis of my nutritional program. It's my nutritional foundation. And I'm hoping to share this benefit with as many people as I can. So does anybody have any questions? Lisa, I'll pass it back over to you.
Wow, that was amazing, Chris. I know that my family's been using moringa and Zija moringa for 6 years now, and you know, everybody needs to listen to this information that Chris provided. I mean, we really need to educate ourselves and other people about the not only the lack of nutrition that's in our food source, but you know, the nutrition that they think that they're taking from different supplementation. So that was amazing information. Chris, if I just had a couple of questions, and I know you covered some of this. So the first thing is, if moringa is so good, why isn't it more available, and why haven't people heard of it if it's the superfood with all these nutrients in it? Why is that?
Well, like we talked about a few minutes ago, it's really over here in the Western world that it's new to us. It's been in other cultures for eons. But so it's kind of a two-part answer. Even in those other cultures, the way they use moringa is often not really getting the full potential out of the plant, not getting the full potential of the botano, because of cultural ways of using it quite often destroy a lot of the nutrient base that's in it. So even though those populations know how good the plant is, they've used it in their diet, they've used it for natural medicines, because it didn't really have a real standout effect. It's never really made its way over here in terms of our being aware of that plant and how it's used. But it's also, I mean, our company Zija has invested so much money in making this botanical available to us in a way that is so packed with nutrition, and not a lot of companies are willing to invest that kind of money into a process that has very little recognition factor in this part of the world, right? So our job is educating people what moringa actually is. So I don't know if that answers the question clearly. It's the money behind providing a very high quality source is a limiting factor. A lack of recognition factor over here is that people just are not really aware of it yet. But something I'd like to actually just share with you is in case you're not aware, this is how much information there is on moringa. There's a whole book written on Dr. Monica Marqueu's book. Is something I highly recommend to people that really have an interest in this botanical. It's chock full of information, but there's this information I wanted to read. Okay, so things like the International Eye Foundation over here, based in Maryland, USA, is promoting moringa for the prevention of childhood blindness due to malnutrition in poor countries. Moringa, through the richness in vitamins, saves precious eyesight in the most vulnerable victims, children with vitamin A deficiency. Maybe among all the good news, the most moving stories come from the Senegalese Project Mother and Child Health. In an effort to combat child death and disease due to malnourishment, the use of locally grown moringa was proposed to infants, to nursing mothers, and pregnant women. And although moringa grows in Africa, the leaves were rarely used as food before. So even over there, they're starting to be aware of how fast this can turn around. Like kids that are almost dying from malnutrition, as little as 7 grams of moringa a day brings these kids around in such a short, like inside of a couple of weeks. You wouldn't believe the difference. There's a video on this, and you wouldn't believe the difference in how these kids look in 2 weeks. That just is proof in the pudding for how effective this botanical is. But we're just learning about it now. Our universities are studying it. Our company happens to be ahead of the game, but it's coming, and there's a lot of excitement about what they're finding. Like what I was just talking about was zeatin, its potential, like in treating people with cancers, is very exciting. So over time, you will be hearing more about moringa, and you're going to hear most of it from Zita.
That's amazing. I mean, this is amazing. Can make such a difference in people's lives, definitely. I think one of the questions that we get quite often, and I think you've done a good job of covering that, Chris, and obviously with the slide that you have up, a lot of people can say they can buy moringa from Whole Foods, and what's the difference? So I think you've done a really good job at covering that information. If you have anything to add to that.
Well, I have a big document that I could add to it, but most people don't want to read all of that. But there is no pretender. By far, Zita's moringa and the money that they've invested into making sure that we get the highest quality is something that only a company that's willing to invest in this is able to provide. This, our farms are actually in the Himalayas. I don't know if people are aware of that. So all the growth and the farming and the harvesting is done over there. And then we ship it all back over here to actually do the final processing in our plants to pharmaceutical grade, so that each of those little sachets of powder that you get have the very same amounts of moringa in them. There's no guesswork done on this. It's all very, very precise. And because our company is NSF certified, that means that what we say goes into one of those sachets, those envelopes, that better be what's in there. And they've monitored all of our processes in order to be NSF certified. I don't know if people know what that is, but it's a very high degree of certification called the National Sterilization Foundation. And they look at all of your manufacturing process with an eye tooth, and you better pass every one of those tests or you're not getting certified. So that means you absolutely guarantee what's inside that envelope. You guarantee that your manufacturing is contaminant free. There's very high standards of processing. So yeah, you can go down to Walmart and buy some moringa. Go ahead, but you might as well eat the dried grass off your lawn out back, because you're probably getting about as much nutrition out of it. So if you want to put something good in your body, invest in yourself and buy the source that really knows how to do this.
Awesome. Yes, I mean, we hear people saying, "Oh, I'm gonna get the seeds and I'm gonna grow them myself." You know, here even in the Okanagan, right, or down in
Yeah,
Vancouver, and
yeah,
mm, you know, it's amazing what we have, and we have what we've offered and the quality of it. So, one last question, Chris, that I wanted to ask you, and it comes up quite often, is people want to know, like, how long before you feel anything, like you feel some type of difference in your, how you're feeling once you're taking the moringa. And I know personally, with having dealing with different customers, I know that's a different time frame for each person. So if you could just maybe just speak to that, just in closing here, what a person can expect, and one of the reasons why they feel things at different times, or different things are affected by taking the moringa.
yeah, sure. So the past two installments that we had in our series, I brought up a slide that is kind of my mantra, because it really illustrates. Maybe I should see if I could bring it up. Just hang on a second. Just give me a minute, and I'm going to bring up last week's slides. This one. So the answer lies here, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea of nutrition is to create these healthy roots. And these healthy roots are synonymous with the physiological systems that I was talking about a few minutes ago. The digestive system, circulatory system, the hormones, so your endocrine system, your nervous tissue, your skeletal system. Your body is composed of systems, the basic physiological systems. If they're clean and in good shape, you don't get the symptoms. The body is amazingly self-corrective. If you provide the best environment for your body to function, you'll have a much higher degree of health. So what's going on down here is different from individual to individual. We're all in a different state of perfection, so to speak, of optimization in the state of these roots. It can take any kind of effect from nutrition is so individual, because it depends on the state that you're in when you begin. So let's create like an example. If somebody was say very active, they walk to work every day, and they're fairly athletic, and they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, hey, you got to lose 10 pounds. I want you to go on an exercise program. Come back and see me in a couple of months, and let's see how you're doing. So this guy goes off and, for example, he starts running or whatever, and comes back in a couple of months, and the doctor will check up on him and see how he's doing. Now, let's say individual B is 60 pounds overweight and has got type 2 diabetes already. And I'm trying to think of the worst situation I can. And the doctor, he comes to the doctor and says, goes for a check, when the doctor says, yeah, you got to start on an exercise program. I want you to start, whatever you're going to do, if it's running or whatever, to come back and see me in a couple months, and let's see how you're doing. Individual A is going to come back to the doctor in 2 months, is going to be far ahead of individual B. It's going to take individual B longer to get to a similar state that individual A is in, just because of his starting point. And nutrition is like that too. So if you've been smoking for 30 years, have a lot of sugar in your diet, don't exercise, you do all these things that are nasty. You eat at McDonald's 5 times a week, and then you start taking moringa, It's going to take a while. You have to be patient with it. So some people feel effects inside of a month, inside of 2 months. Some people, it takes a year. Some people it takes a year and a half. It depends on your starting point, what your body needs. I would say that even somebody that's in, the other thing about people that are in a bad state, they don't really identify with really what it feels like to be healthy. Again, I can make an analogy with somebody that's athletic. They know what it feels like to be in shape. They know what it feels like to be fit. Somebody who hasn't exercised for years doesn't really know what fitness feels like. It's all new to them. So for them to measure their progress, they don't really know what they're comparing it to. And a lot of the times we have a very excessive expectation. When somebody sits down and talks to us about how wonderful something like moringa is, you got to be careful on how you present all this great information to people, because some people think they're going to turn into Superman after taking this thing, right? They have all this wild images in their brain about how they're going to be, Mr. Bodybuilder, super healthy kind of thing. But you have to keep expectations realistic. Real nutrition and being healthy is not about being Superman. That's not what it's about. It's about establishing a healthy weight paradigm. It's about not catching every common cold that comes your way. It's about having a healthy appetite. It's about having the energy to get through the day, to do the things that you need to do, to not be dropping off asleep at work, things like that. That's really what it means to be healthy. So having a realistic expectation for health is also part of that answer. So you could be comparing apples and oranges with different people that you talk to. But most people, if they do it diligently, they use the moringa for 3 months, 4 months, they know something's different is happening. They can usually tell you, say, yeah, I'm sleeping better at night, or I haven't been sick, or I'm starting to lose some weight without really trying. There's all different, depends on what's going on down here in the roots. But most people, they usually start to feel something after a few months, but it might take longer depending on who you are.
That is a really great explanation, and I wish I would have asked you that a long time ago. You've just presented some amazing information, and thank you so much, Chris, because I'm all excited again about taking Zija's moringa, and excited to share the message of moringa. So thank you very much for tonight. That was amazing, great information. Thank you so much. So everyone, healthy shouldn't be hard, and there are solutions to help you with different aspects of your health and well-being. If you're a customer or you're looking at this for the first time, please connect with the person who invited you to this series to discuss possible solutions for you. So each segment ties together, so if you've enjoyed the information or learned something new and are wanting to learn more, our next segment's topic is belly bloating. So we'll see you next Thursday at 7 p.m. So make sure you connect with the person who invited you here for the link. The Zoom ID is the same each week. So have a great night, everyone, and we'll see you next week. And a big
just add one thing before we go.
Yeah,
that
sure.
We are recording these sessions. So if you know people that have missed this and would like to see it, or you'd like to share it with other people, it is posted inside the Facebook group Back to Basics. So
yes, and that's the other thing too, as well as if you haven't been invited to Back to Basics Facebook page, connect with somebody on here to invite you on there, and just make sure that if you are inviting people on there, to just remind them to accept their invitation so they can have access to the recordings and to the information that we're posting on there. All right. Well, with that, everyone have a great night, and we will see you next Thursday night at 7 p.m. sharp.
Bye, everybody.